The first question is your impression from brandy company. I know that you have a tequila factory.
I have a tequila factory. You know, it was funny because one of the things I learned here is that much of the same process about aging in the barrels and how the barrels are so significant and how good the product is. But we just had some incredible brandy in there. It was just unbelievable. In fact, we're both just drunk right now for the interview. So whatever you say, we'll tell you anything you want to know.
All right, Mr. Clooney, you are involved in more than 30 initiatives. Why made you to take part in Aurora Prize?
Well, I've been involved for a period of time and interested in Armenia for a number of reasons. Obviously, there's always the question of sort of identifying things like the Armenian genocide, and I think that that's something that has a lot of emotion in the United States as well. But when I met Ruben, he wanted to talk about finding a version of Armenian history where we can talk about the great things that have happened and looking forward. And I thought, what a great idea to be able to find people who risk their lives at times, but certainly give up virtually everything in their life in the service and help of others, and to find a way to celebrate that in the name of Aurora, in the name of looking back in a way. And I thought this is such a perfect way to, rather than deal in anger, to deal with it in sort of a form of kindness and generosity and love. And I've never seen it done that way before, and I was very excited to be involved with Ruben.
Mr. Vardanyan, why George Clooney? Why not Bill Murray or Angelina Jolie?
Well, Bill would have been very good.
George is smiling better.
Well, no, Bill would have drunk all of your booze in here, so.
No, to be serious, I would say when we met and we talked about John and George about what we're doing and how, not on our watch, and other initiatives in South Sudan, and how George really seriously looking about this. The most interesting element, how is governments who are doing genocide been financing, and I think being financial guy, I said, oh my goodness, we're trying to find the touch most difficult, most dangerous part of the entire system, because we're trying to find a way to track all this financial flow of the money that's going, supporting this type of the criminal activities. And we talk about this all, we talk about what's happening in South Sudan, what's happening in Armenia, what's happening in other places in the world. And again, it's not because the George is so famous, but he really put his life and his commitment to this type of things doing, and seriously, I said, it's great. And sharing the vision, sharing the type of attitude to be positive and try to find something which will be helpful for the future, I said, it's great. And we share the same vision. I think it was common view, because we try to help also not on our watch, and we try to help them to.
It's helped a tremendous amount. You know, the one thing I think that we do have in common is that we feel that we're both very lucky. You know, we do. I feel that I'm very lucky, and I feel that I've been sort of been given this position that most people, you know, don't get, and I would have only dreamed of as a young kid growing up in Kentucky. And the idea that luck should be spread around to other people, I think is a really good thing, and I think it's an important part of being part of society, which is if you're lucky enough to have good fortune, then you should spread it around as often and as thoroughly as you possibly can.
How can Aurora Prize be part of the world assistance to the refugees? Because we are now seeing that refugees is a new challenge for in Europe, in the United States.
It's a difficult thing, obviously. It's, you know, there's never been a time in history that refugees haven't been a difficult subject matter. You know, it always has been. You know, the reality is, though, that your responsibility, our responsibility, is to never let their stories die. Right? Because it's very important that we continually talk about the idea that these people aren't just people who decided to just leave Syria, for instance, because they just don't want to live there anymore. They're forced out because they're being murdered, and their children are being murdered, and they're willing to risk their lives. We just saw 500 people killed off of a boat yesterday or the day before yesterday. They know the dangers in trying to leave, and they're willing to take those risks. That's how bad it is. And so our job as public figures and as a son of a newsman, my father was a newsman for 45 years, is finding ways, creative ways sometimes, to always be able to keep this in the news and not forget it. We tend to lose sight of the big story when the little ones come up. You know, we're in the middle of a presidential election in the United States. That takes over everything. You will never hear or very seldom hear, stories about the refugees right now. You'll hear very short pieces about the refugees because we're not dealing with it very much in the United States, quite honestly, which we should. So the more you can talk about it and the more you can find creative ways to bring it up, I think it's a good thing.
Mr. Vardanyan, what do you think about Aurora being a part of the global assistance to the world challenge?
You know, unfortunately, if you look what's happening now today in Syria, it's the same place, same stories, what's happened 100 years ago, and saying, Jesus, it's all like replication, deja vu. It's everything coming the same place, and now you see this. My Christian minorities, they're facing the same challenge, saying, what's happened? Why people not learning the lessons? Why the world not learning the lessons? What's happened 100 years ago? Why we cannot really raise our voice and say, it's not only refugee crisis of people coming to Europe. How the rape Yazidis women will come back to the way society is, how we can be married, what's happened with those kids who lost again their parents, how we'll be studying. Again, we're getting so many questions, again, raised by many institutions who most of the people ignore. And one of the things we also started in Aurora Prize is doing is humanitarian index, trying to check how people in different countries feel responsible, not only being heroes and support, but also by themselves, how they can be involved and support some of these activities. Because it looks sometimes, oh, it's a big problem, it's too much, I cannot do it, I cannot be, I'm the average person living in place. But it's not true, you can really support. It's why one of the points which I agree with George 100% is raising his voice over what's happening and trying to convince people we can be part of this process to influence the changes and not be just ignorant and say, oh, it's not my problem.
We keep, there's a fascinating thing that happens as time goes on, and I'm sure you've seen this before, I know I have, which is that there was always the constant, long after Armenia, and once they finally came up with the name genocide, which they hadn't until World War II, after that, everyone said, had we known, we would have done something about it. If we just had known. And then we had Cambodia, and then we had Rwanda, and then we had Bosnia, Darfur, and we know. And that's the great sort of travesty of all of this, is that every time we say, well, if we'd known, we would have done something about it. Well, we do know, and we see it, and we can see it happening in real time. And it's what do we do about that? And that's a question that we have to ask all of ourselves along the way.
You are going to UWC Dilijan. How important is education for the little countries like Armenia? Because it's also being able and being lucky to have possibility and access to this type of education.
Look, this is a very special place. It's a very unique place. There aren't many places. We're talking about your school. It's very unique. I mean, I wish it was everywhere in the world, because the one thing we learn is that prejudices and hatred has to actually be taught. You know, children don't grow up hating one another. They don't hate each other as a race. They don't hate each other as a religion. They have to be taught how to do that. And so to take young people from warring nations and put them in a school together where they spend their days and nights talking and eating together and looking out for one another is the way you stop people from fighting. It's understanding other people's culture without pigeonholing them into being your enemy. And I just think that I wish that there was one of these in every city in the world. I just think it's the best way of opening people's eyes to other cultures, particularly the ones they're at war with.
Do your colleagues share your commitment to humanitarian initiatives? I mean, other A-list actors. I mean, do you get support because?
Sure. You know, not on our watches. You know, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, Don Cheadle, and myself. Angelina Jolie and Brad do all kinds of things together. Matt does a lot of things.
Is it important to have Hollywood stars to talk about, voicing about?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a bit of a responsibility that comes with it, as you know. Here's the thing, the reality is every citizen should speak up. I grew up in a time in my country in the 60s and 70s where protest was important. We had the civil rights movement, we had the Vietnam movement, we had the women's rights movement. I was taught at a young age that your voice matters and can count. So I happened to end up becoming famous along the way. Doesn't mean that I have to stop talking about it. But the truth of the matter is this. As a newsman, you're a newsman. Sometimes it's hard to get stories on the news that are the ones that you think are the ones. And my father had that. My father covered a story in Honduras, I think it was, in the 80s. And then the story got bumped for Elizabeth Taylor story that had run. And he was furious about it. And when I was going to Darfur for the first time, I called up my father and I said, "You remember how your story got bumped?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, why don't we go to Darfur and you be the newsman and I'll be Elizabeth Taylor and we'll get the story, and we'll get this story on the news." I'm a big believer in if you have the ability to bring attention to something and have you know, knowledge of the subject, you can't just jump in. I think it's important to do.
Mr. Vardanyan, what do you think about the celebrities being involved in more humanitarian initiatives?
You know, we're living in a very interesting world now. If you look what's happening with the moral leaders and the leaders who are really people following. And I think, like I agree with you, the responsibility we're carrying business elite, celebrities from the culture and other type of activities. It's continually the same. You need to be responsible if you're part of elite. Be involved in what's happening in society. You cannot say, you know what, I'm doing my own job and what's happening around the world, I don't care. Because one of the reasons, because we become very interconnected. The world becomes so connected, too close to each other. Yeah. Just saying, you know what, whatever in Darfur doesn't matter for me. It's becoming not true anymore. And it's like an ecology problem, the climate changing, the many other things which we are talking about, some of the crises that's happening in the world. Responsibility is one part of the elite. If you're elite, you're responsible. Because celebrity is not just you're very well known. In my opinion, celebrities means you're more responsible. The question, of course, different celebrities, different people who become very well known in their activities can have a different interest and can not be doing the same. But one important point I want to make is you cannot just stay out of this process saying, I'm ignoring, I'm living my life, I'm doing my job, and I don't care what's happening with the world.
A while ago, the whole Armenia was watching a trial between Armenia and Turkey in European Court of Human Rights, and Artak Clooney was representing Armenia. So now the whole Armenia is calling me to ask you, where's Amal?
Do you know, she's right now, today, she was at the White House and then met with Senator McCain and others. She's representing a woman named Khadija, who's a reporter who's been jailed in Azerbaijan for telling the truth, quite honestly. And she's there trying to find ways to get this, this incredible, brilliant reporter set free, because I think my wife's, what she really believes in life is that telling the truth shouldn't put you in jail. Ever. And so that's where she is right now. Literally, I just showed him a picture of her with some senators. So she couldn't be here today. And honestly, she was really disappointed because we were looking forward to it. You know, she's gone after the government of Maldives, for instance, to get the former president released, and he was. And it was a big success for her. But that means we can't go to the Maldives anymore. So we're starting to run out of places to go. So we were really looking forward to coming to Yerevan.
But the people love Amal and George in every respect, yeah.
And my last question, in exactly 2 weeks, it's your birthday. What present would make you happy?
Well, that's a good question. I'll tell you let's see, what would make me happy? It's a weird thing, because when you're me, you know, I've already gotten more presents than I could ever imagine. So I suppose the things that would make me happy were things that that mattered in our life. I think Khadija being set free would be a really nice birthday present. I think that I think the success of this would be a really nice birthday present. I'm very excited about what it is Ruben has decided to do. I really, you know, you can't speak enough about this. There's a lot of people who made money in the world, and there aren't that many who actually decided, well, let's find a way to give it back and share. And I'm very excited about that. So maybe the success of that I'll take as a good birthday present. That'd be fun.
I hope we'll be doing it, and we'll be surprised. A good surprise will come. But great stories, by the way. I would say, like, it's a really always for finalists. I read the stories. It's unbelievable. You know.
I mean, these are people that literally have given up their entire lives for this. You know, there's a doctor in the Nuba Mountains who literally, he and his group, but it started by him, the hospital, looks after 500,000 people in one hospital. So it's some of the stuff they do is just astonishing.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.